All right, so I one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about at some point was just some thoughts I have on just driving in general. And I kind of have I don't really have that many thoughts on it, so it's kind of going to be a more brief thing, but I did kind of want to talk about it at some point because it's just kind of been interesting to, you know, to learn what the fuck is going on with driving. So I guess first thing first thing I really say is just I was always terrified of driving. I thought I would never be able to drive. I'd never be able to fucking handle it, you know? And I mean, it wasn't like there was anything particularly wrong with me, but I always felt oh, well, maybe I'm not going to be, maybe I'm going to miss something. Maybe I'm going to, just be tired one day and I'm just not paying attention and just boom, or something like that. Or maybe, one day my brakes aren't going to work and I'm going to fucking be stuck crashing into something or something. Turns out a lot of those fears were just kind of unfounded and stupid. And I didn't drive for a really long time. Even though I had a license, I passed my test the first time I went, which honestly I was surprised. I think part of it, the guy, he's not an instructor. I don't know, the guy that, performs the test with you, he's in the car with you. That guy was pretty chill. He's a nice guy because, sometimes you get the people that are hard asses and, sometimes that's how people fail. But, that guy was pretty chill. But, yeah, so, I mean, I passed it the first time, or I passed it literally my first try, but it's just, I never felt like I could actually, pull it off, sort of. And honestly, that was the one thing that really kind of prevented me from, adulting sooner, was that. But, now I've been driving for 3 months. Ever since I started, I pretty much never stopped. I think maybe there's been 2 or 3 days out of the past 3 months, or maybe a little less than 3 months. But ever since I started driving, there's probably been only 2 or 3 days where I wasn't driving somewhere or doing something, which is pretty good. So, and I mean, I'm not gonna say there weren't a couple moments that were kind of close, but I mean, hey, nothing. I've managed to avoid that so far, so I'm happy about that. Trying not to jinx myself here. But I mean, honestly, I feel a lot better about it now. I'm not constantly thinking man, I'm gonna crash, and every time I finish driving, I'm not man, thank God I didn't crash or something. Well, I made it. That's it. But yeah, it's honestly been, it's been pretty, pretty decent. But definitely, I think when you drive, you do lose a little faith in humanity at times, because there are some moments where it's just what the fuck are you doing? I mean, even right before this, right before I came here, I was driving down a street and there's a kid on, my side of the road on a bicycle, and he clearly sees I'm coming. I stopped, because I was there's a kid that's coming head on with me, and he just kept going head on with me. So I was okay, I guess I'm just gonna fucking, I guess I'm just gonna go on the other side of the street and hope that no car just fucking comes around this corner and, hits me. So that was cool. There's just a lot of moments like that where it's just you lose a little bit of faith in humanity from some of these people. I mean, there's one time, I'm on a pretty busy street, and it's 35 miles per hour or something. And this guy just does a U-turn just like in front of me. Like he's on the other side of the road. He just all of a sudden he just does a fucking U-turn. It's like, what the fuck, dude? You know, and I expect there'll be many more, you know, dumb things like that. I'm sure probably every single fucking person has a story, you know, about when they were driving and someone just did something really fucking stupid. Not just like, you know, I'm a new driver, you know, I didn't know how to brake properly, or, you know, I accidentally went through a stop sign because I didn't know it was there or something. Like someone who just does something so stupid that you can't fathom how it's possible the brain could think of that. You know, I feel like everybody probably has one of those stories if they've driven for any little bit of time. But, you know, that kind of sucks, I guess. But also it feels good to drive. I know there's those people, God, what are, I think are they the people that are like, you know, I mean, they're just like anti-car people or whatever, I guess. I know they say like people are like car pilled or whatever, you know, some shit like that. But I legitimately think that it, like, obviously I think there should be alternatives to cars. I kind of don't like that cars are like the main way that we have to, you know, do things to an extent. I think that things like public transport should be a thing, you know, a better thing than they are. They should be like a viable alternative because some people literally can't drive because of their vision or, you know, I don't know, whatever other impairment they have. They literally can't drive. So that's a big problem. And then you have people where, you know, they shouldn't drive, you know, like people who, you know, get drunk. They shouldn't be driving. People who, you know, are fucking gonna be on their phone all the time when they're driving, which I never do. You know, I put my phone down and that's it. You know, like I literally put my phone in the cup holder and, you know, I just leave it there. I don't look at it. Maybe if I'm at a red light, you know, and like it just turned red, you know, I'll maybe take a peek, maybe, you know, get in a gym or something in Pokemon Go. Otherwise, I don't look at my phone, you know, unless I pull over. If I pull over, then okay, because I'm literally stopped. But, you know, if I'm on the road, I'm not fucking looking at my phone because that's just stupid. Which is another thing, like, it's surprising how many people I feel, you know, use their phone in the car. You know, not just like, oh, I, you know, started a phone call and I put it down, you know, whatever. Like, people literally will use their phone in the car. It's like, what the fuck, dude? It's just baffling that people do that because you're literally, you know, playing with people's lives at that point. But back to where I was. I think, like, obviously there are bad drivers and stuff, but I feel like it hasn't been so terrible. And I think also it's been pretty nice just to be able to actually, you know, go places on my own. You know, like I remember the first time I like walked to, you know, a couple stores on my own. It's like, whoa. Like I walked to this store on my own. That's cool. But, you know, or like even, you know, I walked to a park in another town on my own. Like that's pretty cool. But felt a little weirder when it's like I went to a mall on my own, you know, or like I went to, you know, a store that I've never been to on my own, you know. That felt a little different. And it was, I mean, honestly, I think it's a cool thing because, like, you know, it feels like nobody is there to limit you. Like, you're just there to do whatever the fuck you want, you know, however long you want. It feels good. And I honestly, you know, I didn't really think of that until after, I, you know, experienced it the first time. Just like, wow, I actually drove myself here and I'm here on my own. And it feels so weird because I'm never here on my own, but now I am. So that's a cool feeling. But I will say that, I'm definitely not like a perfect driver or anything yet. But I think for a long time, one of the problems I always had with driving too was that I felt like I was never perfect. And that always kind of, I guess, like, messed with me, because you feel like you're imperfect and it's like, well, what if I fuck up? But I think the thing I didn't realize that, like, unless you really fuck up or someone else really fucks up, you'll probably be okay driving as long as you've got like an okay head on your shoulders. Like as long as you're not, fucking speeding like crazy and all that, you'll be okay. That's kind of what I've learned, And like obviously I guess it kind of depends on the driver, but like you can have like a margin of error where, if as long as you're not like right on the guy's bumper, you'll have time to stop if he suddenly stops, as long as you're paying attention to your surroundings a decent amount, you'll know, if a fucking kid's gonna run in front of you or something. So, honestly, I'm not gonna say driving is the greatest thing in the world, but I kind of respect it now, whereas before I was always so fucking scared of it. But now I've learned to kind of move past that. I think the other thing I will say too is I know a lot of people, I mean, I think it's probably just kind of like a general thing with my generation is like there's just a lot of anxiety and stuff, especially I think with COVID. I think COVID kind of amplified that a lot. But there's just like in general a lot of anxiety with people and stuff, and like I think I don't know if this is true or not 100%, but I know that there's been this like general decline or whatever of people actually getting their licenses. Like kids who, they turn 16 or 17, whatever, every state has different things. So, but they turn the age where it's like, okay, you can get your permit and you can get, your license, and then you can get, your actual license. And a lot of people are just not getting their license anymore because I guess number one, you don't like, it's not like I needed to drive a car for a while. Like, usually I just had people drive me or pick me up or something. So it wasn't that bad. But, you don't have to, like, before, even back when I was a kid, you basically had to drive everywhere, Now you don't. Now there's a lot of things you can just do at home. Like if, you need to go to the store to get something, like you can just fucking go on Amazon or some shit. So you don't really have to drive that much. But, I guess it kind of makes me a little sad now. There was a lot of stuff I probably missed out on because I wasn't driving before. And now that I'm driving, now I'm like, fuck, why did I not start sooner? So, I mean, honestly, there's like one thing to take away from this video. It's that if you're not driving yet, I would probably recommend it. I mean, I guess it depends on where you live as well, because, if you live in a city, you don't really need to drive. But, if you're in not a city like me, you kind of have to drive to go places. So, like maybe you can get to like a couple stores just by walking or biking or whatever, but like you're not going to be able to get to a lot of places if you don't drive, even just like, oh, I want to go to Best Buy so that I can buy, whatever. I can buy a laptop or something like I did. That was where I bought my MacBook. But, I had to drive there and, it's not like a horrible drive. It's not like I drove an hour to get to a Best Buy, but like, I'm not fucking walking there. It would be like probably an all day endeavor if I fucking tried to walk there. At least it would take, it would be like a fucking 10-hour walk or some shit. So that is not happening. So I think if you are, not in a city and you don't really have walkable stuff, or, you don't have great public transit, you don't have like trains or good buses or whatever, then probably just try to drive, if you can, obviously. And just don't be afraid of it so much. Obviously it feels scary, but I think part of what, well, I guess there's two things. I guess first off, I was motivated to, to do things. I was motivated to actually improve myself. But also I think it's just, I kept doing it consistently, and that was always the problem I had. I would like start, maybe do it a couple times and whatever and then stop. And also like, I'd just be on like little side streets where nobody's there. So, I could practice, but like that only gets you so far. You have to start driving other places too. You can't just drive on the same like 4 streets and expect that, you're going to be like a fucking perfect driver or anything. Like you have to drive in other places because it also kind of, helps you with those edge case scenarios, because sometimes you get like weird cases where you get like, oh, this place is a one way, or like, oh, you can make a U-turn here. Like, oh, this, jug handle leads here, but like you can't, make a turn at the light or something. Stuff like that is just things that you kind of have to get used to, because when you start out, you don't really realize that. Even like today, some of the places I was going, there's like fucking these one ways, and it's like really weird, and you kind of have to learn how to navigate those one ways and like where leads where and all that. It's very, very interesting, but ultimately I think it's a pretty rewarding experience to drive, even if you're gonna have to deal with a bunch of dumbasses at some point, and I mean, sometimes driving can be very scary, but it's also pretty rewarding. And I know there's people who, hate cars and whatever, and like I get in some ways, I think that society shouldn't be car centric. I think cars should always be an option, but they shouldn't be, a requirement to live for some people. But that's just kind of the way it is, I guess. It's partially because, America, it's like we have a lot of freedom, but sometimes freedom can also be, limiting to an extent. Maybe that's its whole other, topic, but it's like, yeah, it's nice to be able to have a car and, have the freedom to go wherever the fuck you want. But then it's also like, because, things basically require you to drive, you're kind of forced into a car. So like technically you have freedom, but you also don't really have freedom because you're kind of forced into a car, that sort of thing. It's very interesting. But I think ultimately I do appreciate, having a car, being able to do things, I think it's nice to be able to actually go somewhere and not just be, at home. My only regret really is that I wish I started sooner, and I wish I hadn't let a lot of those like fears and dread and anxiety and all that get to me. It was stupid that I, fell for that shit as long as I did, but I mean, hey, I got through it. Better late than never, right? So yeah, I mean, ultimately I'm happy I'm driving, and to me, like, driving was like the one big roadblock I had to cross to be able to start working. And well, now that I did that, I started, started working. So that's cool. But yeah, ultimately, I am probably going to go home and get ready for work, I guess. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm trying to make these a little more often. I have more time this week, so it's not that bad. But I just gotta work on other stuff so that I can just pump these out quicker. I gotta continue setting up my MacBook and all that. Anyways, though, I am gonna go head home. So yeah, I guess that's it.